Welcome back to Gerodynamics. Okay, so the next video in the candidates platforms videos. All right, so I am going to do Chase Oliver this time. Chase Oliver is the Libertarian candidate for president. He has officially won that nomination. I voted for him in the primary, so just keep that in mind. And I do disagree with him on quite a few things. So let's take a look to see how much I disagree with him. I do want to start off by saying that he is a former Democrat who has become a libertarian. You can definitely see that in a lot of his positions. I'm not a huge fan of former Democrats or former Republicans coming into the Libertarian Party as politicians. I am a huge fan of former Democrats and Republicans as, voters like me coming into the Libertarian Party. But as far as politicians go, Gary Johnson was terrible. Then we had Jo Jorgensen, who was great. And now we have Oliver, who is not great. Let's just say I really wish we had Jo Jorgensen this time. But anyways, we've got Chase Oliver, so let's take a look. All right. Yes, as a former Democrat, we will take a look at his policies. Reform immigration for the 21st century. So, by the way, I'm looking at votechaseoliver.com/platform. This is Chase Oliver's website. This is his platform. This is exactly how he laid it out, which should be a lot smoother, and we should be able to cover this in one video, hopefully. A lot smoother than the Biden video where I had to go off of Wikipedia. Anyways, let's do this. Reform immigration for the 21st century. Our immigration system is a tragic mess. Agreed. We simply must break the partisan logjam and bring people from all parties together to reform and modernize it. Agreed. There are a few better examples of bad government than the overly complex current laws and regulations involving immigration. Agreed. The president needs to take the lead and work with Congress to radically simplify our immigration system so people can come here, work, and become members of our community without being relegated to the shadows. Agreed. Immigrants built this country, and they can help keep it growing and prospering for future generations of Americans. As president, I would. All right. Good job, man. Good job on your initial statement. Collaborate with Congress to return to an Ellis Island style of processing immigrants. It should be simple for those who wish to come here to work and build a better life, to appear before immigration officials at an accredited port of entry, be given medical and criminal checks to assess their safety, and receive a visa allowing them to immediately find employment. This is a process that should take at most days, not months or years. Good stuff. Good stuff. Create a simpler path to citizenship for immigrants who are already here. This is where I'm going to disagree with them. Some 8 million undocumented immigrants are currently present in our labor force, doing essential jobs, paying payroll taxes, and contributing to our economic growth. I do agree with that. Formalizing this arrangement will not only allow them to further contribute to the economy by meeting critical labor demand and reducing inflationary pressures, it also saves taxpayers billions of dollars in enforcement costs. While I agree with that, I do agree that it would save us a lot of money to do it this way. My problem with that, there's multiple problems with that, but my biggest problem with that is it doesn't stop the problem. It doesn't give a reason for people to not come here illegally. It encourages people to come here illegally. And what we need to do as part of our reform is to try to reduce illegal immigration to just the criminals, right? Just people who are coming here to do something bad and illegal. If you encourage people to come here illegally by saying that, well, if you're here illegally, we're going to go ahead and just start the process, right? Then you don't encourage them to not come here illegally. And that should be one of the barriers that prevent people, or that encourage people basically to come here legally. We do need to make the legal process a lot smoother and make the illegal process a lot tougher. Those two things would cause people to want to come here legally, which is what we want. Okay, so I disagree with this. We need to send them home. And we could save a bunch of money on your car insurance. We could save a bunch of money on enforcement by stating this as a overhaul, where we say, look, you know, we are going to make the process for you to come here and work legally and to be here as a legal resident, give you visas, allow you to work, all of that. We are going to streamline that. We're going to make that a lot easier for you. You're not going to have to be paid to be trafficked back into this country. You're going to be able to do that, but you have to deport yourself. That would save a lot on the costs that go along with enforcement if we encourage self-deportation, both by that being a smoother process, and also if you don't do it, there are consequences. That is the way that you save money on enforcement, not just saying, okay, well, you're here, we'll ignore the fact that you came here illegally. No, we need to be able to go through the process that you just talked about in the previous section of your platform, where we do background checks, where we do health checks, those sorts of things. That process that should be streamlined to days, not months, not years. That process is something that everybody needs to go through. And if you're already here illegally, then how are you going to go through that process without coming through legally? All right. Let's go back to his platform. I'm liking it a lot, though. Create a path to citizenship for both DACA-eligible residents and the children of foreign workers admitted to the U.S. on temporary work visas. Okay. I'm torn. I don't know that it should be a separate process. I think that that citizenship should be a result of being here for a length of time. You're going to be able to be here legally, working, all that. You want to build a desire to become a citizen. You want to encourage people to become a part of the culture, right? You want to encourage them to embrace the culture and love the culture, and a desire to become a citizen, right? As opposed to, well, you're here, so your parents came here through the legal process, of course. They're not citizens, but you were born here, so you can become a citizen. Sure, I get that, but I still think it should be the process, the citizenship process. So it should require a certain, length of time, skin in the game, education, and basically checks to see if this is something that you really want. Do you want to be a citizen for the right reasons and that sort of thing? I think that we could make that process. It doesn't have to be aimed at any specific group, but we could definitely improve that process so that more people could become citizens and more of the people that we would like to be citizens. All right. These immigrants often lose their legal status upon turning 21. Yeah. Okay, I agree with that. They shouldn't just because they turn 21, they should still have their legal status. They should be able to continue to work and live here just like their parents did, as long as everything is on the legal up and up. Still, you would want your health and legal background checks, but if you've been here since you were born, that should be super easy. All right. Expand both the H-1B visa and startup visa, agree, which allows skilled immigrants to bring their talent and innovation to our shores. These individuals add to our economy by starting new businesses and putting more Americans to work. 55% of American startups that are valued at over $1 billion were founded or co-founded by immigrants. That is beautiful. That is beautiful. And going through that process is what gets us there. We want that legal process. We want people coming here who are going to enrich us as well as themselves. You know, that is the history of immigrants in America. It really is. And I definitely support that. We're on the same 100% the same page on that. All right. Empower people through justice reform. It is long past time we address the problems with our criminal justice system, from courts to police to prisons. We need reforms in every area with one goal in mind: empower people, not the government. I think we agree on the premise, but I think we're going to disagree on some of the implementation. With less than 5% of the world's population, we host roughly a quarter of its prison population. Yeah. That is simply unacceptable in a nation that styles itself as a land of the free. Agreed. The current system feeds a prison industrial complex that leads to militarization of our police, corruption in our prosecutors who have perverse incentives to push for longer sentences, the building of private prisons that value profit over rehabilitation, and a cycle of incarceration that breeds lowered earnings and poverty that leads to recidivism. My administration would. Okay. I think that private prison systems can work and would probably lead to better prisons, because government-run things are typically not good. Private prisons, though, would need to value rehabilitation. And definitely taking care of the inmates, obviously. But profit as an incentive is not a bad thing. Having private prisons that generate a profit could be an okay thing. But the problem is the profit is coming from the government. So I'm torn on this issue. We'll move on. All right. But I do believe that we have far too many laws that can result in people being in prison. That's why our prison populations are so high. A lot of our laws should not require that sort of punishment. So I'll agree on that. In qualified immunity for federal law enforcement, agreed. So those abused or harmed by law enforcement can have their day in court, agreed. While this judge created rule that allows public officials to escape civil liability for the abuse of citizens' rights is most often exercised at the state and local levels to shield rogue police officers, making federal agents liable for abuse of power would allow us to place pressure on state and local officials to follow suit. Beautifully said, and completely agree. In federal mandatory minimum sentencing, agreed, which ties the hands of judges and compels even some who are innocent to plead guilty to avoid the possibility of lengthy incarceration. Yes. A wealth of evidence demonstrates that mandatory minimums accelerate prison growth with no overall benefit to crime control. By legislatively mandating punishment, we have taken discretion out of the hands of judges and juries where they rightly belong. Agreed. In the prosecution of victimless crimes, yes, and instead place the focus on law enforcement of investigating and prosecuting crimes of violence, theft, fraud, and coercion, or the crimes of the government. All right, so we mostly agree there. We need to revamp that system. Okay, replace the death penalty with humane alternatives. Yes, I am probably in the minority of conservatives, but that's part of what makes me a libertarian. I am opposed to the death penalty in all cases. Sorry, I am. Why? I could do a whole video on that, but basically, the government makes mistakes, and the government makes a lot of them. And just because someone has been convicted of a crime, we have seen many, many instances of being convicted of a crime does not mean you committed it. So the final penalty being death is, I can't support it. I just can't. Okay. Government shouldn't be putting people to death in general. Okay. I am an opponent of the death penalty. In too many instances, the government has carried out an execution and it was later found out that the convicted were innocent of their crimes. There is no reversal of death, nor any compensation that can make those murdered by the state, however unintentional, whole. It also does not deter crime, and the act itself is both cruel and does nothing to restore what was lost by the victims. In addition, of 198 nation states and territories in the world, 140 have abolished this barbaric practice, leaving America among the minority of 58 who still abide by this tragic policy. As a president, I would. Generally, for the most part, I agree with what he's saying there. Okay. Immediately abolish the death penalty for all federal crimes. Good. Not only are mistakes sometimes made that are not discovered until the execution has been carried out, but prosecutors often use the threat of the penalty as a method for extracting confessions in exchange for more lenient sentencing. This presents ethical concerns in itself, such as innocent suspects confessing to crimes they did not commit to escape the needle, the chamber, or the chair. Have federal prosecutory officials look for alternatives to life without parole, which is the most used substitute for the death penalty. While the gravity of some crimes, such as murder, is horrific, the goal of our prison system is to be rehabilitative as well as punitive. While not all offenders will prove fit to enter society, some will earn a chance at clemency, and this should be allowed to happen on a case-by-case basis. I agree with the concept of case-by-case basis, but life in prison without parole, as long as you have your appeal process, I'm not opposed to life without parole. In specific cases, maybe not as often as it is an option, but I think it should be an option. We shouldn't make it completely illegal, but what he's saying there is prosecutory officials look for alternatives to life without parole. I would encourage that also, to look for alternatives, not to completely eliminate life without parole as an option. Okay. As usual, utilize the example of federal policy as a bully pulpit to encourage governors and state legislatures to revisit their own policies and practices. Exactly. You can't make this you can't say that the death penalty should be illegal in all states. You just can't. And while I encourage states to make it illegal, I also think that a state should be allowed to have it as a punishment if they deem that that's appropriate for their state. All right. In the Feld war on drugs indefinitely. Okay, sorry about that. All right. As Feld war on drugs drags into its fifth long decade, we can all see that the policies of strict prohibition and prison need to change. Drugs, they're bad. All right. Caffeine is my drug. Okay. Just as with the 18th Amendment and its prohibition of alcohol, the criminalization of drugs simply has not worked. The black market it has created have increased violent crime, endangered police corruption, and contributed to the rise of cartels in places near, such as Mexico, and far, such as Afghanistan. It's time to end more than 2 generations of regressive, harmful, and unproductive drug policy and move America into a new chapter. As president, I will immediately act to remove all federal laws criminalizing cannabis. I agree with that. And end burdensome regulatory hurdles like federal banking regulations placed on the cannabis industry. I agree with that. And I don't even smoke it. Deschedule cannabis with the stroke of a pen. I think Biden did something, but there's probably more that could be done. Legislation isn't required. Okay. Issue full pardons for persons who were convicted solely for nonviolent drug offenses and urge every governor to do the same. I agree. Work with Congress to obtain the repeal of the Controlled Substance Act, which helped pave the way for the war on drugs. Agreed. Push for the passage of the Drug Policy Reform Act, which would decriminalize possession and use of all drugs, allow for the criminal records of users to be sealed, and restore their right to vote. I agree. Encourage governors to not only follow suit, but to reinforce the option of voluntary treatment for heavy users and addicts so that they may maintain or return to their status of healthy, productive members of society. Mental health issues should be treated as such, and those needing help should be neither criminalized nor stigmatized by government policy. So there are some drugs that just are far too deadly. So that's something that we need to kind of look at. It's tough to get into the weeds of this, especially in a video like this. The vast majority of drug use should not be illegal. And if drugs were not illegal, you'd be less likely to see situations where fentanyl was getting into other types of drugs and causing people to die. So for the most part, I agree with what he's saying. There are a little bit more nuances to my position probably on this than his, but I agree with him probably far more than most of the other candidates. And so, yes, we need to at least decriminalize the nonviolent crimes. Basically, get rid of all that. Respect and defend your right to privacy and civil liberties. It is often the case that the worst government abuses come disguised as protection from danger and harm. If you feel in danger, it becomes easy for the government to have you trade your liberty for the illusion of security. We have warrantless wiretaps, abuses of the FISA courts, and an overarching Patriot Act, to name a few. Even worse, we attempt to imprison those who expose the hard truths we need to hear. As president, I will fight to end these programs. They eat away at your constitutionally protected privacy and civil liberties, and pardon those who have blown the whistle on abuse and illegal actions of our government. As president, I will. Okay, buddy. Work with Congress to abolish the Patriot Act, which has unconstitutionally increased the powers and scope of the police and surveillance state. Agreed. Work to repeal the FISA Amendments Act of 2008, which serves as the legal justification for surveillance abuses disclosed by Edward Snowden in 2013. Agreed. In the Transportation Security Administration, TSA, which routinely violates our civil liberties, requires airlines to become agents of federal surveillance, and whose screening devices, both for luggage and facial recognition, repeatedly exhibit problems that are inexcusable in relation to the taxpayer dollars spent. Agreed. Have any surviving cabinet departments and federal agencies that collect citizens' information review why and how that information is collected and how it is used. In many ways, privacy is a highly individual matter, and the best judge of how personal information should be used is the individual involved. Agreed. End wars and support peace. My entire adult life, our nation has been at war somewhere in the world. Yes. I have friends and loved ones who have served and come home with visible and invisible scars of combat. Yes. I've seen them mourn their brothers and sisters who didn't come home. I meet more and more anti-war veterans every day. They know more than anyone about the cost of war. It's time we focus our foreign policy on peace. We should end our policy of sending drones around the world and instead foster international goodwill by defending free trade and free markets. Our nation has long had the moniker leader of the free world. It is time we earn that distinction by insisting that peace is the way forward. In the wars, in the drones, in the policy of constant intervention. It's easy to drop a bomb. It's much harder to serve as a beacon of peace. We must take the more difficult but necessary path. And I will probably agree with Chase Oliver more than every other candidate when it comes to the issue of war. RFK Jr., I'm pretty sure, is right there with us. And Trump more so than Biden, although Trump is, he did a great job while he was president of not getting us involved in any more conflicts. But he definitely had some interventionist positions, which some were good, some were bad. But Chase Oliver, anti-war. If you are anti-war, that's the guy to vote for, not Joe Biden, no matter what his platform said. He is pro-war more so than anybody else. Okay. Close all overseas bases and immediately return active duty personnel to domestic bases. Agreed. The cost savings of doing so will be used as a one-time contribution to discharge the interest on currently outstanding federally guaranteed student loans. What the heck? That's a really weird transfer of funds. While I agree that we could discharge interest on federal student loans, and that is something that I kind of hinted at when talking about Biden's policies, but Biden's policies were terrible. I could see a discharge of student loan interest debt. So not the debt itself, not the money you borrowed, but the interest on that money. I could see that being a benefit to to moving forward with helping people get out of the student loans that they're stuck in. Transferring money from the military to that is a weird position to take. I don't agree with that. We should be decreasing the budget across the board, which I'm sure we'll get to. And part of decreasing the budget across the board would be decreasing the military budget, defense budget. And a large way that you could decrease the military and defense budget is by closing foreign bases and bringing our troops home. Okay, and I do agree with that. I know some people are going to disagree with that vehemently, but I am of the mindset that our troops should be defending our coasts and our borders, and they should only be sent out in very, very specific scenarios where we are defending our allies from attack, not policing the world. Okay, we'll get back to that. End aid being directed to nation states currently at war. This includes Israel and Ukraine. While we offer moral support to our friends currently engaged with the enemy, we should not be contributing to extending the fight. Agreed. Agreed. If they don't need us to come and defend them, and we don't agree that we should come and defend them, then we shouldn't be funding it. And I don't think they need us to fund it. And in fact, if we didn't fund it, these wars, these conflicts would end a lot sooner. And that is the goal. With that said, I recognize that there are aggressors and victims in war. I would allow private parties, including defense contractors, to voluntarily contribute funds and sell weapons to our friends without fear of violating any federal laws. Interesting. I wasn't expecting that. I'll have to think about that. But that's his position. That's Chase Oliver's position. If asked to act as a mediator, I would more than happily allow America to act as a mediator in negotiating a peace that ends the conflict without rewarding aggressing parties for bad behavior. 100%. But they need to ask. They need to want us to. We shouldn't be like sticking our nose. Hey, can we help? Can we help? Can we help you put that war to bed while making a lot of money off of the war? Hmm? No. Okay. Utilize trade as a bargaining chip to format peace with our neighbors. I think what he means, this probably needs a little bit more details there, Chase. Not that you're going to see my video, but you probably need a little bit more there. Because what I think you mean is we will encourage peace around the world by making trade between countries so valuable that you won't want to jeopardize that by having a war. And I don't think you mean punish people with trade embargoes. I'm pretty sure that's what you mean. Maybe someone who knows can let me know. Pretty sure he doesn't support the trade embargoes on people doing stuff we disagree with, because that's private trade. We're not going to send them aid, but private companies trading or selling. Anyways, okay, we'll come back to that. Or, we won't come back to that, but maybe I'll have another video about something about that at some point in time. Okay, create a thriving economy. All right, let's take a look at this. Every day, average Americans face many challenges. Wait, how long is this video now? Oof, these videos are way longer than I was expecting them to be. Hopefully you guys are into it. Every day, average Americans face many challenges in our overly regulated economy, where government, lobbyists, and special interests continuously conspire to pick winners and losers, from trillions of dollars in government deficits and trillions more in unfunded liabilities. Our government recklessly crowds out funding that would be better served allowing innovation in the marketplace to find solutions to our most pressing issues. To combat these constant rounds of economic and financial crisis, we must get government out of our boardrooms and wallets and allow individuals to decide how to best describe their hard-earned dollars. As president, I will close regulatory loopholes that reward firms that have close relationships with government officials and that stifle both competition and the innovation which competition creates. Agreed, 100%. Immediately end all tariffs which serve only to increase the bottom lines of protected industries, shift labor from more efficient industries while creating a net loss of jobs, and raises prices by lowering the number of alternatives for consumers to choose among. Tariffs are a form of embargo on domestic laborers and consumers, raising the costs of doing business for importers who pass these added costs onto end buyers. Very good. In addition to ending special protections such as tariffs for favored industries, I will also encourage Congress to pass legislation prohibiting bailing out firms that engage in irresponsible business and fiscal practices. Not only, oh, that's my poor doggy. He's sleepy. That's my dog. Sounds like he's dreaming. Bailing out firms that engage in irresponsible business and fiscal practices. Not only will we not bail out them for engaging in them, we won't encourage them to do the irresponsible businesses and fiscal practices. It is not the role of government to underwrite the fiduciary duty that firms have to their stakeholders. Agreed. I will strongly urge Congress to work with each state to introduce and pass a balanced budget amendment to the Constitution, forever ending the perpetual cycle of deficit spending. 100%, this is such a huge and important issue. We need a balanced budget amendment. We need the government to spend less than it takes in. We need the government to take in less, resulting in spending less than it takes in even more. We need to reduce the size of the government so that we can do this. Constitutional amendment will force their hands, and a constitutional amendment is needed to rein in Congress. So that constitutional amendment would probably have to go through the states, convention of states style. However, if we were able to get it through Congress, that'd be great. But it sounds like he also believes that we couldn't get it through Congress. We'd have to encourage states. Okay, balanced budget amendment. 100% agree with that. All right, here we go. Respect individual choice on tough issues. Let's see how he handles this. There are many complex issues in our society which offer no easy solutions. More than a few of these issues involve individuals engaging in activities that may run counter to our personal beliefs. Outside of obvious criminal offenses such as assault, theft, or murder, it is not the role of government in a free society to prohibit such behavior, even when the majority wishes it so. For this reason, activities such as abortion are the province of individual choice and bodily autonomy. I agree with everything he said except for the assertion that it applies to abortion. Here's why. Abortion is an issue that involves more than one person. All right? And we have to protect the rights of one individual from the abuses of the rights by another individual. Just like we have to protect individuals from the abuses of their rights by the government. But the government is supposed to protect our individual rights. And when you have more than one person involved, you can't just say that it's an individual choice and bodily autonomy. There are, typically speaking, three individuals involved: the mother, the father, and the child. The child is unborn, I get that, but our primary right, without which no other right could be granted, without the right to life, we do not have any other rights. And I believe that the right to life should be applied to the unborn. They are alive. Just because they're unborn doesn't mean they're not alive. Okay. So, this has nothing to do with my religion. This has nothing to do with forcing a woman to carry to term. It has nothing to do with hating women or wanting to take away an individual's choice. I believe that you are protecting the right to life when you make abortion illegal. Okay, so that said, I know that I am in the minority when it comes to libertarians. So it makes sense to me that the libertarian candidate would be this pro-choice in this method. The thing about libertarians, and I'm sure I'm going to get to that when I read the next section, or next couple sections. The thing about libertarians is when they say they are pro-choice, they don't mean just pro-abortion. Libertarians mean they are pro-choice in all things that don't harm other people other than abortion, because, we just disagree on that. So I know that as a pro-life libertarian, I'm in the minority. There are pro-life libertarians, and you can be a libertarian and be pro-life. But I understand that, my position is in the minority, and it's something that I disagree with him vehemently on. But at least, he is pro-choice across the board, not just pro-abortion. Okay. I recognize, okay, we did that. I will encourage the passage of the Hyde Amendment, which will prevent federal dollars from funding abortion clinics. Good. So, he's good on that. He doesn't believe that it should be federally funded, that it should be an individual's choice, but that doesn't mean that the federal government needs to pay for it. I will encourage states to incentivize alternatives to abortion. Good. Such as adoption by easing burdensome regulations that greatly increase their cost. See, you don't need to throw money at stuff for stuff to be supported by the government. So when someone says that you don't support the children after birth, you're wrong. I do. But I don't think that we need to throw money at every problem. Okay. And then let's see here. So by easing burdensome regulations and greatly increasing their costs, the median range for adoption of a newborn is between $25,000 and $45,000, placing this avenue out of range of many who would otherwise be willing. So we need to do our part to decrease the regulations that would reduce the cost of an adoption. Okay, great. It doesn't look like he went too much into the other aspects, but I know he does support, your rights to choose, your right to choose in almost all things. Your right to choose what school you go to. Your right to choose what gun you own. Your right to choose what religion to attend. Those sorts of things, right? So he is definitely a pro-choice candidate across the board. All right. Empowering parents and students in education. At the federal level, the best policy on education is to remove the federal government's involvement in education. I applaud this. I support abolishing the Department of Education and block granting those funds back to states to be returned to taxpayers. I also support getting the government out of the student loan business so market forces can lower the costs of higher education over time. 100% agree with all of that. In the student debt crisis, to assist in individual financial and retirement security. At this critical moment in time in our economy, millions of people find themselves saddled with an average of $28,950 in student loan debt. This puts them behind the 8 ball before they have even gotten started. 92% of all student loans debt is held or backed by our federal government, with some 1.61 trillion out of 1.75 trillion outstanding. This is a burden that neither students nor the taxpayers responsible for these guarantees can continue to bear. The skyrocketing costs of college education can be directly placed on the feet of those massive boondoggles, which creates pervasive incentives to raise the cost of tuition by artificially inflating the demand beyond that which the market would normally provide. It's perfect. It's perfect. I will immediately end the federal backing of student loans by asking Congress to make all current student loans interest-free. Great. While simultaneously ending all future government guaranteed loans. Perfect. Perfect. I would then make the discharge of interest revenue neutral by requiring the Department of Defense to cut costs by closing overseas bases and installations and bringing our troops home. Weird. Okay. Instead of engaging in expensive nation building and peacekeeping missions abroad, it is only right that the Department of Defense bear part of the cost, as mounting debt is as big a threat to our security as any foreign enemy. That whole position is so weird to me. I don't disagree with either aspect, but tying them together is just so weird. Anyways, okay, moving on. Finally, I would allow students to stabilize their financial situations by allowing student loan debt to be dischargeable in bankruptcy just like any other loan. I want well-educated populace that can compete with the minds of any other nation, but not at the cost of our nation's financial and retirement security. Okay. I could get with that. Champion gun rights for all. I support the right of every person to defend themselves from violence and aggression. Gun control throughout our history has been used to limit the ability of vulnerable populations to defend themselves. Armed people are harder to oppress and harder to attack. I will not support any new gun restrictions and will look to repeal the restrictions that exist today. I will nominate to the Judiciary Judges Committee committed to protecting the rights of all persons to defend themselves from aggression. District of Columbia versus Heller was a seminal moment in our history, affirming not only the right of citizens to own arms, but determining that restrictions such as trigger locks are unconstitutional. I will work to extend this legal concept to all bans, such as bans on bump stocks. 100% agree with this guy. Well, the bump stock thing was just overruled, but in general, 100% agree. Lower the cost of healthcare through market and innovation. Let's see, where are we at? Okay, a couple more points. Lower the cost of healthcare through market and innovation. Healthcare is too expensive because of government overregulation. We should advocate for market alternatives to heavily regulate employer-provided insurance, such as the direct primary care model. We should also reform how we bring new drugs to market and in practices such as patent evergreening, which keep the cost of too many drugs artificially high. With more choices and free market forces, we will see a drop in the cost of healthcare overall. Great. I agree. I would urge Congress to remove limits on health savings accounts. Definitely. Currently, these tax-deductible accounts are capped at $4,150 per year. For individuals, $8,300 for families. This fails to cover the cost of healthcare in America, which averages $13,493 a year per individual. We must lower the regulatory burden on the pharmaceutical industry, which imposes huge costs on research and development that both protects favored firms by erecting costly barriers to entry that crowd out similar firms and increase the cost of end products to consumers. As I already stated, I would end the practice of evergreen patients, which create artificial product monopolies that keep prices high. While I understand the need for firms and protect their profits, competition would result in better versions of already existing medications, greater innovation, and lower prices. Agreed. Restore prosperity by reducing inflation. Every American is feeling the pinch of excessive inflation. Hold on real quick. Okay. Reduce federal spending. Every American is feeling the pinch of excessive inflation, especially those with the least safety net to begin with. Among other factors, this is driven by massive overspending from the government and printing money from thin air to pay for it. The cycle is unsustainable, and we must cut spending to balance the budget. With spending under control, we will see an easing of inflation. True. And in the long run, have stronger, healthier, and more robust economy for all. As president, I would propose that we reduce federal spending to pandemic levels, balancing the budget. While it has long been the theory that when interest rates rise to combat inflation, the increased cost of borrowing cause the government to borrow less, but the evidence suggests this simply isn't the case. Under these circumstances, deficit spending increases inflationary pressures, increasing the cost of government debt. 100% agree. Reduce the red tape and barriers to entry that inhibit new businesses and entrepreneurial growth. A sizable portion of our current road to inflation is the result of demand exceeding supply post-pandemic. Increased productivity and more efficient supply chain change can help reduce inflationary pressures. Very true. Significantly reduce the money supply, which is a necessary supplement to the fiscal consolidation strategy of budget reduction. Supply side policies don't curb inflation. Decreased demand does. An absence of easy money results in the reining in of spending by consumers, lowering inflation organically. And that, my friends, is his platform. There are things that are not addressed in his platform. I am going to leave it at that, though. If I come across something in another platform where I can reference back to Chase's platform or Chase's position and kind of like contrast the two, I don't agree with everything Chase says. I think he's a great candidate for the Libertarian Party, but I disagree with him on a lot of things. Even as a fellow libertarian. So hopefully we'll get a chance to talk about some more of those things that I disagree with, because his platform was very positive, and I wanted to make sense, that I do disagree with him on a lot of things. All right, everybody, we're going to end this video. It's been a long one. Hopefully you've enjoyed. Hopefully you've learned some things. If you didn't know much about the Libertarian Party, that is Chase's platform, but it's pretty standard for a Libertarian Party platform. Like I said, there is a variety of libertarians out there that do have different positions on different things, but Chase is definitely a good representation of the Libertarian Party, even though he was a former Democrat. All right, everybody, take care. Have a good day.